Hey everyone, Alex here, otherwise known as YaBonks, and on today's episode of the YaBonks Show, I have a very special event planned here. As many of you know, Orbital and the Orbital Swap decentralized exchange is changing owners, and it is currently not technically owned by anybody in specific. There isn't an investigation going on with something related to the people who have control of those contracts right now, and they are willing to part ways with the DEX, the Orbital Swap DEX, to pass it over to new owners. And an interesting part in all of this is not a monetary exchange. This is not a buyout, and this is not a bidding war. This is a community vote that will take place between three different candidates. And there are three teams, three projects that will be competing for the community sentiment and votes. So with me here today is Phithe from the Seigniorage Circus, and they are one of the teams that is looking to acquire the Orbital Swap DEX. Phithe, do you want to say hello, and would you mind telling me and the audience who you are and a little bit about yourself?
Thank you so much, Alex, for having me. And no, I would not mind telling you. So my name is Phithe. I will be doxxed here shortly, but right now I'm not, and it's unfortunate that we couldn't schedule this interview for a more for the time after. But the point being is to take action when you can. But I have been in crypto blockchain as a hobbyist since as early as 2014, and I started working in it professionally around the end of 2017, which was around the ICO craze and days. And generally speaking, I have worked on several projects, and I'm starting to realize why there's such a high rate of failure in this space. And this Seigniorage Circus is really is an organization built around fixing DeFi, Alex. Okay, now we've gotten very good at abandoning things when they go wrong in DeFi. I think some people can recognize that. In fact, Orbital would be a data point on that trend. Now, it always really bothered me, Alex, that even though everybody knows that blockchains are irrevocable and immutable ledgers, people have zero problem just like leaving something in the fossil record and just like not fixing it and just starting over from the beginning. And I know that is sometimes culturally conditioned because the blockchain being irrevocable, it can be difficult to edit things that once they're there, they're permanent. But really, I think people have gotten into the habit of rushing things to launch without going over any details, without going over any of the human side, which is sort of the problem with Orbital Swap. Like there was a complete lack of thought based around how the team would be organized and how custody was controlled and how decisions were made. And that has become a focal point of the Seigniorage Circus. I know there was a question that perhaps is not directly asked in this interview about the us having a website. We do have a website planned, but it's not up yet.
Okay.
The website Seigniorage Circus itself is not a DeFi project. There is
now that's actually my next question. So what is your project, Seigniorage Circus, and would you give me like a quick elevator pitch for it?
100%. The Seigniorage Circus was originally founded as a team of people that would help me fix DeFi protocols, specifically focusing in the area of tomb forks. We had a very large rate of success in the first 90 days or so of our inception. And since then, we've pivoted our focus to permanently fixing these to become ecosystems so that DeFi can be something more than just short-term Ponzi schemes, if that makes sense. So our goal really at the Seigniorage Circus is to be a leadership and authority organization that actually provides and creates sustainability, actual markets, actual money that doesn't collapse through hyperinflation or just a complete lack of economic understanding on the back end, and more or less does not run away from problems and abandons them, but rather runs towards problems. Does that make sense? I think that is the blue ocean for us because where everybody else is scared to fix something, that's where like you're going to do the most impact. Does that make sense? And that is what the Seigniorage Circus is right now. I think you could say we are a main Discord server, and we have a few satellite Discords pertaining to the satellite projects that we have custody of in what we call the hegemony container. And that is in a nutshell the Seigniorage Circus, and I would call it a rigorously organized volunteer organization, if that makes sense. That is our goal, and it's our goal to kind of focus on the human organization side of DeFi, because I think that's what's getting overlooked, and there's just a complete glaring lack of any innovation or real problem solving tenacity in the space. That would be my answer to the question, Alex.
Okay. Thank you. Very interesting answer. So with all that being said, why do you think you are the best team to take over Orbital? And please keep your answer about you, your project, and Orbital only.
Great. Okay. I have come to the conclusion, Alex, that's a great question, by the way, and I will absolutely focus it about me. I have come to the conclusion that I must be 10 to 100 times better at designing tokenomic systems than everybody else in DeFi. I know that sounds extremely, extremely confident. I still feel like I'm being modest, because when I see the ideas that people come up with, I don't think they have any foresight at all. And the most important thing is they don't look at any economic history outside of DeFi. Money is not something that was invented by Satoshi Nakamoto. It was not invented by Vitalik Buterin. It was not invented by anybody else in blockchain's pantheon of demigods, right? Money is something that goes back thousands of years. The concept of seigniorage is something that goes back thousands and thousands of years. There is a glaring lack of understanding with why markets exist, the cyclical nature of markets, and how humans fulfill a role that markets need. Markets are, in fact, a cyclical expression of all the cycles that affect us as Homo sapiens, whether that be the day-night cycle, the season cycle, the precipitation cycle. All these things are really just neurochemical expressions of the same cycles that formed all of life on planet Earth. And the thing is, that's not really understood in DeFi. That's just sort of overlooked because people think more about trilemmas based on how a blockchain could be compared to another, not about how they solve problems for humans, which is still where the value is going to be derived from. We've gotten very, very good at creating new types of money, Alex. We've gotten very bad at creating new types of value. Money is a store of value. That is one of the aspects of money. And if that's being overlooked, you're never going to succeed at anything. So that would be what I think our areas of strength are, at least mine are. I have also already designed over the weekend tokenomics that would give. Actually, is that a different question?
If I know where you're going with this, yes, I do have a set of questions lined up for that, and we'll get to those. But if you want to give like a quick rundown, okay, we can get into the specifics more later.
Let's put it this way. I have already designed solutions to help Orbital Swap become functional, because believe it or not, it's possible to fix these things. It just requires like basic level economic understanding, and also a you also need to have a versatility with esoteric type of economics as well, obscure economic theory. You have to look at a whole bunch of different economic theories, because that's really where going to be like the new. That has to be the new dimension that blockchain technologies explore. Otherwise, like a whole bunch of nothing's going to happen. And it's just going to be people at a casino losing their life savings because they don't understand that value can be created and destroyed. It is not thermodynamically insured like energy and matter. That's my answer, Alex. I'll end that one there.
Okay, sounds good. And what is your long-term vision for Orbital, and how does that fit in with your plans for your project?
Great. Okay, so Orbital can be a DEX that, through new tokenomics and rather a amazingly intuitive UI, can be something that doesn't require a whole bunch of management and happens to just scale over time naturally. It doesn't need new marketing pushes. It doesn't always need a new feature. It will just dominate in a certain area of value delivery that's Ideally not forkable, because you can fork the contract behind it, but that doesn't mean you can fork the way it's expressed on the front end, which is where the value is going to be created. But generally speaking, everything I've designed so far has been with the focus of helping the human users who are interacting with it make more informed decisions. DEXs right now do a terrible job. They do a terrible job at making their users smarter. They, in fact, say like, "Oh, we don't want to confuse them. We'll make things more simple." Don't like. That's not like what a person in DeFi even wants. Like, they don't want that. They end up looking at DEX Screener for hours and hours and hours, just switching between time intervals, right? Like, that's not that. This is like this like best practices from like web development they think matters here, and it's just a complete glaring lack of understanding your user. Like, everyone in this space is trying to understand this better. That is what they want, even more than the ROI. They want a better level of understanding, and DEXs do a terrible job at explaining that, because quite often, like let's just say, to reference a previous conversation I've had, very often the people who are working on them have a lack of understanding of their own bias, and they need to understand that their job is not just extracting value from their users, but in fact creating value for them. So DEXs can really be revolutionized in a way that does that, so it isn't just a constant fork of Uniswap v2 or whatever, right? Like, every single feature on here, including the lottery, we have 2 lotteries kind of like designed already within the circus, and we could put both of them on here. I'm not going to get into that right now. That's probably outside the context of this question.
All right. So, as you were talking, I was showing the audience, if they aren't familiar with Orbital Swap and the whole platform, kind of what it looks like and what it does, because you were kind of explaining the function of a DEX and how, it can kind of exist on its own and scale over time. So I just wanted to show the audience a little bit about that. So, speaking of it operating on its own, if you acquire Orbital, would you keep the Orbital brand or change it to something else?
I would keep the brand. Believe it or not, Orbit is a great brand, and I'm actually very disappointed with the way it was executed. A lot of people don't know this, but Nicholas Copernicus, who was the guy who kind of proved heliocentrism the first time, he also actually had a whole bunch of economic theories as well. So the fact of the matter is I've actually designed new tokenomics that are kind of an homage to Nicholas Copernicus, and the fact of the matter is that I think people are underestimating the amount of genius you need to really understand economic impact, because it involves multiple layers of, kind of like the butterfly effect. It's sort of like understanding the butterfly effect and the way human behavior works. So I would not change the brand at all. I would not change the brand. I wouldn't even abandon the coin. That's the answer to another question. But yeah, I would keep the brand. The brand seems fine. I like the color scheme. The color scheme looks good. There's no reason to not call it Orbital either. And yeah, that's even the orb coin, even though I have plans to kind of reinvigorate it, I'm not going to abandon it per se, even if I don't have control of it, if that makes sense. Yeah, there's no reason to abandon it. And the reason people abandon their currencies is because they don't understand economics the slightest. Every single one of these can be fixed, but people are lazy and they're not. I feel like I'm bashing other people. I'll tell you this. In blockchain, you can fix currencies extremely rapidly, just like you can pump them, right? Like, you can fix them rapidly too. People don't realize this. You can fix them. It just requires a different skill set than the ones that are normally used to operating with. That's another strength point of us.
Okay. So speaking of you and your group, are you or your team doxed or KYC'd?
I believe a manager known as Techno Tom is more or less doxed. I'll be doxed here in the future, and we're not necessarily going to have a requirement for that, but I will be personally doxing within a matter of weeks, I suppose. I'll be on camera sooner than that, but I will probably be. Let's put it this way: I will have my entire life recalibrated to the point of being a public figure within a matter of weeks, Alex. Okay. Just like you.
Get ready for the heat, man.
this is not my first time. This is just my first time not using a pseudonym. So I've dealt with a lot of I can't avoid it from another job of mine. So it's like I might as well stop being a pussy and just jump in, right? That's the way I look at it.
And you actually, I asked you very strongly to video chat with me the other day, and you did, and we had a face-to-face chat, and I always view that as a good sign when somebody's willing to give somebody like me, who's kind of like, I try to say impartial, objective out here. I don't really care. I'm not out here to like get anybody or anything like that. So a lot of people privately doxed to me, and you did so. I believe I was one of the first people that you've done that with. Is that right?
Yes, you are. Yes. So yes, kudos to you. Yes.
Thanks.
No, I felt like I needed to just, jump in, so to speak. And I think it was good for getting the momentum on my ends to making sure I can do that with everybody else now. The whole internet, right? First Alex, then the whole internet. That's how it's going. But
well, I don't know if the internet is as nice as I am. So
you're right.
But I feel privileged that you shared that with me. That's a big step for a lot of people, and once you do it, there's no going back. So that's good, though, that you're considering it, because I think the Orbital holders, which includes me, I do have Orbital. I am holding a fair amount of Orb tokens, so this is all very relevant to me as a participant in the Orbital platform. So it's important for me, just as I know it's important for my fellow Orbital community members to know and trust to whatever degree possible the person who will be steering the ship with this platform. So that's good to know that you are planning imminently, within the next few weeks, to dox yourself and, add another layer of trust onto this. Obviously, you have a reputation already. You've been out here for a while with the Seigniorage Circus. So, So, okay, good to know. Do you have any plans to deploy new contracts or do a migration?
Yes. The answer is yes. Now, I will tell you this. The Orb token, I don't like compensation plans where they're like, hey, you guys got fucked over, so we're going to launch a new token, and this way you can brace yourself for being disappointed again, but with more skepticism this time. This is what I see as the industry standard in DeFi. And again, this standard is in place because there is just like this glaring lack of any type of economic understanding. So there is, the Orb token should not be abandoned, and it should 100%. The features and utilities and use cases and ecosystem it's supposed to have, that should continue to be built. However, I will also add new tokenomics, possibly with I guess you could call it a coin that orbits Orbital. We'll call it that. Maybe we can look at it that way. Maybe not. But rather, it will be a much more interesting coin, a much more, I guess you could say, innovative coin than Orb, which was effectively just like a regular standard emissions curve with, I think, with voting escrow locking. It's, the docs are now missing from the website, so I don't really have them. I'm hoping somebody out there does, because as of right now, we don't have me.
I printed them off. Titan and Orbital hired me back when they were first getting started to do an in-depth project review video and a code review on my channel. You can still find that out there. So I actually walked through the Orbital code, the documentation, and I printed out a copy for myself. I print everything out because I'm a boomer and I like to read things in paper instead of always looking at a screen like 20 hours a day. So
you're right.
I have a filing system. Every project that I work with, I print out all their docs, I print out all their code, and I have it all stacked over there in a filing cabinet. So I do have the Orbital docs. It's not as much as you'd think. I can tell you straight up, it's like one page specific to Orbital, and it just shows the emissions multipliers for how the emissions are distributed to each farm. And like the lion's share goes to the Orb farm, and then all the way down to like the stable farm gets like the least amount because that's obviously the lowest risk. And then and then the rest of the docs are about Titan. Now, if you go onto the Wayback Machine on the internet, you can actually find that page that I'm talking about with the Orbital docs. And you can also, like, if, and then you can also go to Pancake Swap's documentation, and you can see the rest of the functionality explained there in terms of like the LP farming fees, like your LP pair gets X amount of the fees and so on and so on. And I break down specifically how they modified those fees in my project review video. So that's a cool thing about making a YouTube channel. You kind of become like a historian almost.
You are. You are.
Yeah.
You are a historian. And I appreciate you reminding me that the Wayback Machine exists, because I remember that website now. I didn't even think to look in there. But
Yeah,
I appreciate you.
I pulled that up the other day, and if I go to like docs.titan. Here we go. Let's see. So here we go. Here's Orbs. Can you see my screen?
Let me see. Yep, I can see it. Yep, 100%.
There you go. So here is the main, the little Orbital SS here is just like a little blurb about like, Orbital Space Station is this, and it's got a launch pad. It doesn't really tell you much specifics, but this Orbs yield token distribution page tells you what you need to know, like the max supply of 14 million, 27,000 Orbs daily emissions, this many per block, and then here is how everything is distributed, and here's like where the rewards started, which block, and that's it. That's basically the documentation that they have about Orbital. If you need more specifics, I can point you towards Pancake Swap's documentation that goes into in depth. They didn't fork all the docs.
Orb is also not really a fork of cake, but more on that later. But I appreciate letting me know that. And sure enough, I'm looking at Wayback Machine, and I've also found the docs. I appreciate you reminding me.
And I only felt it fair to share that with you because one of the other projects in a similar boat asked if I had the docs, and I'm like, actually, I do. So I feel like I need to reach out to each of you guys and give that information. So now you have it too, and then I'll reach out to the other one. So there's that. Next question. Do you have any plans to ensure the security of the Orbital platform since one of the previous developers, GoShock, was exploiting it?
Well, naturally, it's going to be on multi-sig with multiple users, done the right way. We're not, at one user is holding all the keys, or the majority, so to speak, like how that works. That's one great way. Basic to make things more secure. Secondly, this was audited by Spade. I see that. I suppose we could get it tested again. Although I'll be honest, like considering the fact that this was just done by the dev behind the project. Wow. Yeah, I would say being more transparent about a multi-sig would be the clear way to go about it. Secondly, yeah. I would also create tokenomics that are not just going to hyperinflate the value of Orb to the fucking floor. Orb was going to do that, by the way, whether there was drama and leadership or not. People just didn't realize that from looking at the documentation. But that's a topic for another time. But yeah, that's the security. Yeah, the answer is we will make it more secure. Naturally, I'm not interested in adopting a DEX and then having it exploited where I just have to get up on stage and be like, well, yeah, obviously don't want that to happen, right? But I am the type, by the way, for those listening, that when something does go wrong, I do run towards the flag as opposed to away from it. And I think that is also a huge value add of the circus adopting Orbital as well.
Okay, good to know. And do you plan on changing the farms, pools, or the orb token specifically in any way that you know of yet?
No, I will leave the orb the way it is. I will probably add more farms with more tokens, to be honest. So more interesting types of emission structures. So Orb right now, I believe, I don't know if it's in the contract this way, but I know it's in the docs this way. Orb basically, let me pull this up. If we're going to the docs, okay. Orb will have a max supply of 14 million with 27,000 Orbs daily emissions. What that means is that as soon as those emissions are done, farms are done, right? So there's a way to make it so that a token is always, that there's this you can design tokenomics so that is always incentivizing liquidity and transaction volume on liquidity pairs without hyperinflating to the floor and having a supply cap. These are things that are feasible and possible. And I don't think people realize how to make that happen, but that's something that will be added. So the farms, I would say you can expect 3 times as many farms, and it'll just be more interesting. And there'll be even more there'll be more tokens associated with Orb. And we're not going to abandon the Orb holders because I know a lot of them are in 1-year lockups, right? So really, the best thing I can do, Alex, is I can set up tokenomics that complement Orb in such a way that the people who have the most to gain are the people who have locked up the most time, right? So
yeah,
that is part of the plan as well.
And that's part of my next questions as well. But finish your thought. What were you going to say?
That's I would say part of the surprise solution, as opposed to, if people want to know what that is, they can vote for us, right? Like, otherwise I don't care to share that idea, right? Like, that's
I see.
I have like you have files of docs, I have files of docs as well, but they're docs that I've written as opposed to docs that I've printed. So the solution to this is actually based off of another solution I was crafting, and it's not hard to kind of just modify and make it something more Copernican, something that kind of represents more the solar system, which is probably what orbital system should be, with a solar cycle, as opposed to this, which is kind of just a Ponzi scheme where they have an emission curve with a supply cap. It's like, okay, we're going to develop this market. After that, what's the point of this coin? Does that make sense? Right? Like, if you're going to do that, there's a reason to have that for initial distribution, but then what, right? So, like, is there a reason to have this coin other than just the lottery? Okay, I mean, I'm not going to get into this, Alex. This is a topic for another video. But yeah, so there's better things that can be done with this, and I don't know what the vision here was. Maybe Benjamin does, but
it was actually, part of it was to support the Titan token. So
yeah,
they were siphoning off the DEX fees to go support a separate token called Titan, and Titan project didn't work out. That developers was siphoning funds, so that whole thing scrapped. But now, like, back in the day when this was all going down, me and a lot of the Orbital community members, we wondered at some points, like, why aren't the DEX fees going to support Orbital as a separate entity, and us people who are holding Orb tokens, right? Like, why? Like, what good are Orb tokens?
Correct.
If the DEX isn't supporting their value, right?
Correct, sir. Yes. So, like, you should have all of the floating pieces anchored in a tokenomic ecosystem. People don't visualize how these work. Okay, that's the problem. So really, I can just look at this and say there was no intention to ever make this work. Okay, I think GoShock was just stringing. I'm not going to get into that, Alex. But yeah,
okay.
The tokenomics of Titan, which I understand was a Titano fork, they don't work. Okay, they're not going to, like, go up in value unless you just have this surge of hype. Because what you need to do is you need to make sure that inward buying pressure outperforms the inflation pressure, which is extracting from the same amount. So you actually have to in order for you to go up, you actually have to make sure that more people are buying than selling, because you're also printing. So you're making a resource more abundant, meaning less scarce and therefore less valuable. The chart will show that. And I can talk about other Titano forks and how the chart has shown that there as well. This is a fundamental lack of understanding about. I'm not going to get into this, Alex. I'm going to get angry if I talk about this.
That's okay. And that was, I think, the premise of the DEX going with it. It was supposed to be, if we get the DEX big enough, it's going to have the fees that can offset the inflation, which they also, one of the selling points was they could turn down and turn off the inflation based on the protocol health, based on community votes, which they did one time. They're like, okay, we're going to take a vote. Do you guys want to turn down the inflation? And the majority voted yes, let's turn it down to this value. And so that they at least had somewhat of like a contingency plan. Regardless, the developer, the one in the shadows, the rogue developer, ended up, being nefarious, right? So the experiment didn't get to its chance to run earnestly. regardless, let's not get into tokenomics specifically on that. Let's stick to Orbital and run through these questions so that way we got about 15 more minutes to get through these, okay?
Let's do it. Let's go.
All right. So big question on everybody's mind, including my own. What will happen to long-term stakeholders that are locked in the pools?
Great question. Okay, so those orb holders, those orb maxis, if you will, my goal is to create mechanisms that make the orb token more scarce. Perhaps make it as scarce as possible so that the relative value held by those tokens is seen as less abundant and therefore more rare. We can also increase the total powers that orb has, because right now it doesn't have that many powers. It's more like, hold this token so we can kind of see how much faith you have in us. I don't even know, like, if I could even describe it that way. But orb could have utilities, including voting for things on the launch pad. It could have, prioritizing the. I'm not gonna get. Okay. I'm not giving away this stuff. But the idea is, the more powerful you make a token and the more scarce you make it, its value will go up, which will be reflected in the price. Okay, now that sounds like a forward-looking statement, so I'll retract it. This is not financial advice, do your own research. And again, I'm not doc, so why believe the word I'm saying? But the point being is, yeah, there is specifically people who have the lowest amount of time preference. Fundamentally speaking, they should deserve to reap the most reward. So everything I'm designing for Orbital is designed to kind of benefit them the most, even if they don't believe in me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'll do it for them even if they hate me. Does that make sense?
So, for instance, I'm locked up in the 1 year single staking orb pool, and then all this stuff with liquid capital went down, and then orb seemed to be orphaned again. So I'm stuck in here for 1 year. I know this is not forward-looking statements. We're just talking about potential plans, strategies to help people like me and other people in the community who are locked up for a year in here, who are believe in the DEX and everything. We think it has a hopeful future if it's in the right hands. So if I'm in here for 1 year from today, and if you got the DEX and you were in control of it with your strategies that you've kind of laid out there, I know some of them are proprietary. You don't want to give it away to the competition quite yet. Do you think that my position, not forward-looking, not financial advice, is I should write it off completely, or do you think that there might be hope that it could be salvageable?
If I win, you should not write it off.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
Yeah, I don't write anything off. Even projects that are completely stalled, collapse to the floor, these currencies can be repaired as long as you just have a basic level of economic literacy. And I don't mean tokenomic literacy, which I think is something still inferior to economic literacy.
Gotcha. Okay. So, speaking of this, how will the fees collected by the DEX be used? And will any of the fees be used to support the orb token and holders?
Yeah, 100% actually. And that was another thing that I wanted to browse the docs for, because believe it or not, I don't believe the docs are really clear about what they wanted to do. Like you said, the fees before were going to support Titan. Well, I'm not adopting Titan. Okay, I have zero interest in that. So really, the most basic idea, it is incredibly basic to do that. But yeah, 100%. Orb's utility can be expanded so that it becomes a platform fee token as well. That will make sense. That will make a lot more sense for it. As opposed to right now, which is kind of like a pointless token. It's a pointless token to just farm the token with the token. Yeah, I'm looking at About Titan right now. I'm looking at Orbital as this one does not show up, so I need to go to a different snapshot. So let's go to
a lot of them won't show up at all. They're not. Yeah. They're not there. Only a few of the pages are on the Wayback Machine.
Okay, well, yeah. So some of it's there, some of it's not. But yeah, I do not know what the fee structure was here, but those can be completely agreed. Okay, if they can be completely redesigned, I think they can. I believe those are keys that are being held. Yeah, it'll be designed to make sense. Right now, it does not make sense. Using the fees to that idea in general is like, hey, we're going to use the fees to support a price. That's called price fixing. Okay. Really, what they need to do is they need to, never mind. I stopped fixing stuff for free. So that is nonsensical. That is not economic. And that really, you need to fix this stuff on. Nope, I'm solving people's problems. Okay. Only if I win do I will explain more into that. And if anybody who's listening to you, they want more insight into the type of ideas that are considered FIFINE brand ideas, they can come visit our server where I preach in the streets all the time about what people are overlooking. What is the point of using a currency to support another currency? Like, why wouldn't you just make this the same currency? Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, what is the point of this? I mean, okay, Alex, imagine if Jerome Powell, who is the chair of the Federal Reserve, got up onto the fucking podium and he said, "Hey, everybody, in order to fix the U.S. dollar, we are now we're going to use the Mexican peso to start buying it back." And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense, Jerome Powell." No, that doesn't make fucking sense. That doesn't make a goddamn lick of sense. All right, Alex, that is complete nonsense. But in DeFi, this is like par for the course. Nobody has any idea what to do because it makes more sense to be a shortcut taking little coward and copy off of the fucking marmoset next to you as opposed to reading a goddamn Wikipedia page about economics. That's how I fucking feel. Like, just read an economic textbook. They give it to high school kids. Like, you should be able to fucking figure this shit out. They don't figure it out, Alex. They don't figure it out in their 3-wrinkle marmoset brains. And that is, okay. Talking about this stuff enrages me. I've been talking about this for months and months. But anyway, yes, let's go to the next question. Although I'm sure
I sense you are very passionate about this subject.
Bet. Oh, you bet. You bet. But let's go on it.
Yeah, let's carry on. We could do a deep dive into that stuff later. Maybe we could do a separate show. That stuff's always fun to talk about. So do you have any other plans to benefit orb holders aside from everything we just talked about?
Other than fixing the coin, I don't think I need one. Yeah. Everyone else probably doesn't have it. I'm not going to speculate on my 2 competitors, who I will not name, but nope. I don't believe they have it. I don't know. I just don't see that in DeFi often enough to believe that other people do that. Does that make sense? So my blue ocean, my unique value add, if you will, is that I will fix a coin as opposed to abandoning it. Every coin that is my responsibility right now, I've designed fixes for them. Not all of them have been implemented yet, but that, again, is a problem more on the human side as opposed to the technology side. But that's more on that later, of course. But yeah, okay. It's not difficult for me to design these things because I can just, reference what I used from learning economics. And I don't even have a college degree in it, but I have 2 friends. One of them is a New York Times bestselling author, and he writes books on economics. And I've learned a lot from just talking to him. And then I have another friend who was kind of like a esoteric economics influencer between the years 2013 and 2016. So just from having these 2 relationships, I am apparently 99th percentile in economic knowledge. And this is just kind of flabbergasting to me and staggering that what looks elementary to me is apparently... Alex, if I talk about this, I'm going to lose my fucking cool. So let's just move on to the next question.
Let's go to the next question then. So
in the land, I'll tell you that. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man, I'll tell you that. I feel like the one-eyed man because it's flabbergasting what people are not looking at.
All right. So do you have any other? Do you plan to keep the launch pad?
Yeah, why not? Honestly, the launch pad as a function can be decentralized. So there's a few concerns with Launchpad, right? Like, first of all, I don't want like rug pulls or scammy projects being on there. However, at the same time, a Launchpad is a great ecosystem where you can, in fact, enhance the utility of a DEX token. In fact, Trader Joe does that. So that's not really like a completely original idea. But yeah, a Launchpad isn't a bad idea because it allows the community value to be expressed in token value. I'm not going to get into that either. But yes, the Launchpad isn't something that needs to be abandoned. I don't believe in abandoning any of this. Other than Titan. I don't care. I don't give a fuck about that. But yeah, I don't think it's even on the menu. I believe those keys are still held with GoShock. Yeah, so...
Yeah, Titan is gone as far as I know. It is just the Orbital core contracts that have been reclaimed. I think there are some auxiliary satellite contracts that are questionable that should, in my opinion, just be scrapped. And if you want to use like the lottery and the other crap, like just redeploy them with your own control systems in place.
what I might do is I might make the Launchpad completely decentralized, and then just have big disclaimers on the Launchpad section. We'll be like, hey, by the way, anybody can kind of like throw their project into this Launchpad, and then never mind. I'm not talking about what I'm fixing, but I have to look at it this way. I can either go through a vetting process and do the thing where every protocol that wants to launch, I effectively have to become a KYC service or a auditing service as a DEX, or I can just make it clear, hey, this is completely decentralized and you are on Binance Smart Chain, which is the capital of rug pulls. So like just do your own research, and none of these projects are considered endorsed, and we do not guarantee any sort of compensation if you are affected. So that would wow. I'm just giving away the plan. Okay, you know what, Alex? Next question, please. Please and thank you.
Okay, sure. Do you plan on releasing any other new features on the Orbital platform?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm not gonna. That would be a lower priority than just fixing what's already there. So, like, first things first, I'll probably create lotteries and multiple versions of lotteries. Something that's great on PancakeSwap is they have that prediction market. So, like, there's no reason not to have one of those. Anything you can do to give the Orb token more use cases will kind of like increase its value, especially if you can find a way to. I'm not finishing that sentence. But yeah, so I have to get really, really scrupulous with myself about giving away the keys to the kingdom, if that makes sense. Because
absolutely.
People who want to listen to me, they listen to me, and people who don't, well, fuck them. So.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is probably proprietary business information that competitors could use. You know what I mean? So I understand. Sure.
Regardless, it's not hard to continue to for every feature you build on a DEX, it begets more features. That's really so easy, and kind of like this is why I feel like the one-eyed man. It really begets more features. Every single thing you can do, you can kind of continue turning that into a tree. Like, just you build the trunks and you build branches, right? Then you build the twigs, right? Like, you can keep going and going and going. Every single feature can have features within it, right? People don't do that. They build like they take the shortest cut to building something, then they wait around with a sense of entitlement and their fucking handout while they wait for some sort of fee to be collected. And that type of attitude is the fundamental reason why these things fail. Everyone is trying to do the least possible to get the most possible, which is the marmoset brain. It's a fucking marmoset brain mentality, and it is why these things don't work out. And it is why this failed as well. Yeah.
Okay. So
nobody wants to take a moment to things. Nobody wants to take a moment to even make sure that you're in line with your own vision. And it's quite possible you don't have one. Maybe people don't. When people have dollar signs instead of pupils, maybe they lose their vision, Alex. You know what I mean? Maybe they just think about Jerome Powell's shitcoin and not the fact that DeFi is supposed to be this revolution in the way we think of currency, but we're not doing that. We're just scamming each other so we can get more of Jerome's shitcoin so we can buy bullshit with it. And that is that describes everybody who I think, when I lay my head down on the pillow at night, I think very vividly about garroting them with piano wire. Like, from behind, from the front, it doesn't matter. I just think about garroting them with piano wire, like to the point where you see the blood vessels in their eyes. You'll see them expand as they gasp for oxygen, because they deserve that. These fucking marmots deserve that shit, Alex. But you know what? I'm probably criticizing way too many people with that statement.
Holy cow.
Extremely about making DeFi functional. Let's put it that way.
That is extreme, sir. So, on that note, let's move to the next question. All right. So,
hey, please do not delete that from the final version of this video, by the way. Yeah. Keep that in.
This is all volunteer basis. I don't have time to edit this. I'm throwing this up here as is.
Perfect.
So, all right. Yeah, that's in there. Man, that is gonna get some comments. All right. So, all right. Now, speaking of people that I think most of us do like, the moderators that have worked tirelessly to kind of help guide people and hold their hands and comfort each other and like find answers to all this stuff and putting in, time without compensation on all this. So what will happen to the existing team members and mods? And I know at least one or two of the team members are actually they were moderators that got elevated to team member status within like just very recently. So they're separate from Titan or Liquid Capital. So the Orbital specific team members and moderators, what's going to happen to them if you take over?
Well, I would say they could be on a one-on-one basis, but I'll tell you this: I will be vetting them against having a basic understanding of the concepts of roles and responsibilities, as well as, for lack of a better way to describe it, I'll basically figure out what they want to do, because we've adopted people into our ranks that we've considered to be on the level, if that makes sense. But if they're not on the level, we'll get rid of them. But if they are on the level, we'll keep them. We'll elevate them. We can put them into a protocol fee supported compensation plan. Like, I mean, for real. Like, why wouldn't I do that? We already have that organization set up internally that is called Hegemony, or Hegemony, depending on how you pronounce it. But it's kind of like this. That idea started with the realization that there was just such a complete lack of regard for the concept of ultimate responsibility in DeFi that I had to lead by example and do that myself. So my organization is very large, so I can in fact create teams to manage the protocol directly, give them all their operating instructions, their SOPs, if you will, let them do this automatically, whereas I step back and go focus on other things. The goal is in DeFi to automate things, and you can do that with people as well, and even compensate them for that, where they get results-based pay based on how well they're doing. So that shouldn't be hard. We generally work with a team of 4. That's the thing. We have 4 departments, and we kind of reflect that in the way we select teammates for projects. And that will be implemented, of course, with the adoption of Orbital. And I guess it involves with what do these mods who have been elevated? By the way, it's very common to see a mod less holding the bag. First of all, it happened to you. Second of all,
it did. not here, but when my first time skinning my teeth in DeFi, as I told you about.
This fucking structure, Alex, has to be rethought. And we've developed this culture in DeFi where it's like, you understand kind of who's in charge, and like, okay, this is a moderator and it's not clear, and we use themed titles, so it's not standardized. So you go from project to project to project, and they're stacked differently. There could be a standard here, so people know that when something goes wrong, who is ultimately responsible. DeFi is, of course, led by people who are cowards, and they always run from their mistakes. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, everybody. And then they just go and they just like hide under their bed and then turn their phone off, right? That because like if nobody is going to like step up to fix problems, nothing's ever really going to change in DeFi. It's just going to happen from collapse to collapse to collapse. You need to have an understanding of the cyclical nature of markets and how it affects human psyche. And if you don't put that into your equation for what you're building, your shit's going to fucking fail, because at the end of the day, the audience you're serving are fucking humans, whether they're using a bot or not, Alex. It has to make sense to them. And that is a layer that exists above the front end, and I think that's why it gets overlooked. But anyway, what was the question? Why did I go on that tangent? You have me spun up right now.
I have that effect on people.
The mods get left holding the bag all the time. Oh, hey, by the way, we rug pulled, and now the mods are in charge of the server. And then the mods are like, oh. And I realize I'm a scapegoat. Oh, this is very awkward. Oh, what do I do? Never made a real mistake.
And then they're on the firing line, right? They're at the front of the line, and the team is gone, and it's just like they're there still.
Yep. So that has like a culture has to go away. The baseline of like what ethics are in DeFi is egregious. Like people don't realize like what they're doing, and because the community doesn't understand, right? So first of all, you have the dev leadership, the team, the project team. They come up with ideas that are economically unethical. They sell their community on it, and then everybody, complains when it doesn't work out. I'm like, oh, hey, that was never going to work out because it violates the laws of nature. If you can make that work, why don't you just turn off gravity and let people fly? Because what you were going to do was an economic miracle, and frankly, the rest of what you were building was not impressive enough to support the existence of a miracle. But what I mean to say by that is, the mods get left holding the bag. So I always like have sympathy for the mods. That happened at this project. That happened at so many projects I can think of. Shout out to Wake Sessions, by the way. But
Yeah.
but anyway, I'm not trying to name anybody else because there's a few people I can think of, but I'll name Wake Sessions. And this is like standard. This is like standard. And the thing is, people don't realize like, oh, hey, maybe I can make this better by thinking about like why this, instead of thinking about being the pattern, they should think about analyzing the pattern. That's how the chart should look, right? We're just chart watchers in DeFi, right? Well, maybe you should realize you're a chart as well, right? And like, what are you doing with the way you interact with humans? Because that's what's showing on DEX Screener as well, a bunch of human activity. So if you can, you know what, Alex, I'm getting too philosophical with you. Like, let's
You
just
always
keep going.
do. You always do. You always end up in a nebulous space after a while. It's entertaining, but I want to stay on topic because we're a little past our 45 minutes. I want to run through these last questions really quick, and then we can shoot the breeze later and talk about some of these nebulous esoteric concepts. So, do you plan to include any Orbital moderators or community members on any multi-sigs?
On a one-by-one basis, like I would like to verify that. If they end up in like our if they end up on the hegemony container team, which that's a working title, but if they end up like in that permanent role, which again, it'll kind of involve like a little bit of training from us to kind of like make sense. Hey, this is your role. This is exactly what you focus on. And this is like kind of what your KPI are as far as your job goes. If they end up there, they can absolutely end up on multi-sig for sure. But it's really, the circus itself has a very interesting leadership style, and even without them, we can end up on multi-party multi-sig, so that people will at least feel like it's not being irresponsibly handled, if that makes sense. But yeah, in the short term, it's like that's I don't think of that as the number one priority, because like right now I feel like I'm scraping this DEX off of the street after I got hit by a truck. So like, hey, do you have any, it just I need to like put life back into it, and then worry about, first of all, let's make it valuable again, and then you know what I mean? Like, I guess we could secure it before making it valuable, but yes, absolutely. Multi-sig is something that will be standard on everything the circus touches eventually.
Yeah, and I think it's more that question from the community is more centered around for people who don't know you or your organization. What they want, like, because this whole Titan Orbital thing was a multi-sig snafu, if you will, where one guy, GoShot, kind of rigged the multi-sigs to people who weren't as technically inclined or like didn't do their due diligence to look deeper. They didn't know how. So like they trusted the developer who'd been working for a year or more with them to like do the right thing, and he just rigged it up, and then he was approving things that they didn't even know about. So I think it's more of like, if Orbital has one of their own on the multi-sig, they might feel a little more comfortable with whoever ends up with this thing. And that's, I think, where this question stems from. And what the right answer is, I don't know, because this is a delicate situation where this does kind of have to get scraped up off the floor and rebuilt. And then, so I think your answer is just fine. You don't want to put somebody you don't trust onto the multi-sig either, right?
Right. Exactly. I don't know if this will cost me votes, but like I care more about protecting my reputation long term, forever and ever and ever, for real, versus like making the community members feel like 5% more comfortable after they've already gotten their eyes stabbed out by the previous team. It's like, first of all, I'm swooping in to be the hero. It's like, you should just, nah, never mind. I'm not gonna, statements like that aren't gonna win me any admirers. But again, it's like, yes, multi-sig will be standard operating for everything the circus touches, mainly because not even about trust, but people die accidentally, Alex. They end up like just getting hit by a bus, right? Like they end up like slipping on something and cracking their head open. And multi-sig allows you to not have that single point of failure. So multi-sig is just cool with like the idea of decentralization, right? It's like, hey, by the way, this isn't being held completely by one person, so that if, God forbid, they end up in a coma tomorrow, nobody's watching this thing for like, 2 years, right? Does that make sense? Right.
Yes.
So like, that's multi-sig is valuable for more things than just, rug pull security. It's valuable for kind of like sustainability and continuation, because it'll be what allows you to be versatile. And human lifespans come to a close, and these blockchains last forever. But people are not treating it that way. They're treating like blockchain currencies should live for less time than humans, and that's sort of staggering. Anyway,
so you see it as important for redundancy and insurance.
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
By the way, based on my calculations, the new tokenomics I will add to Orbital Swap will be sustainable for 18 years plus. See, 18 years. I've done that in Excel, Microsoft Excel. Yeah.
Interesting. So with your new tokenomics plan, which you've been kind of hush-hush about it because you think it's very valuable information and you want to keep that close. You said 18 years, though. It could increase the sustainability of the Orb token and the ecosystem for at least 18 years.
Yep. It'll simultaneously continue to incentivize participation as well as continue to gain participation, right? So people think that in DeFi, there's always going to be like this new thing that's launching, but really Bitcoin now is, 13 years old and it hasn't gone anywhere, right? So like, why we just, there's going to be a saturation point where layer ones upon layer ones upon layer ones don't do anything anymore. They already have over 100 of these, and nobody's building on them because they don't understand what blockchain, or should I say decentralized ledgers, they don't really understand what like that value translates to the human existence. So the tokenomics for Orbital Swap right now, there's going to be 1 year of orb emissions. Well, the tokenomics that I will create will give orb holders, as well as the orb ecosystem, sustainability for 18 years, as well as add more dynamics into it. That's, at least on spreadsheet, it works that way. And generally speaking, my spreadsheets solutions have been pretty good so far, but I'm not here to suck dick. Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay. On that one, let's go to the next question. Orbital, geez, I can't say that word. When you say orbital so many times, it comes out orbitable. Anyway, if you watch my review video, it's 3.5 hours long. By the end of it, I could not say the word orbital. My brain just couldn't comprehend it anymore. But I will try my best here. Orbital might be receiving $20,000 that was promised from the Liquid Capital pre-sale. What will happen to those funds if you take over Orbital?
I'll probably just buy myself a watch.
No comment, man.
Joking. Yeah. I mean, I'll buy 2 watches, Alex. I mean, like, let's not be fucking stupid. Okay, enough joking around. I could
buy so many of this watch with $20,000. Anyway.
But I think 1 watch, that's what 20 grand is worth. Okay. While that would be hilarious in its own kind of poetic sense, probably in development costs. Yeah. Or probably auditing. Okay. Once I build new stuff, I'm expecting, we'll need to audit the new stuff. So then we can effectively, that 20 grand, that's probably exactly what auditing is going to cost. So that's probably where I'll put it.
Okay. And so that sums up all of my technical questions, and I'm going to wrap things up now. So, Phithe, do you have any parting remarks that you want to leave the audience with?
Wow. So many, like so many. Okay, really, I don't know if this is winning me any admirers as well, but I feel like, first of all, my decision to do this, having only 2 parties to vote for is really boring, right? So that was part of the motivation to throw the circus's hat into the ring, if you will. And on top of that, I don't really know that much about my competitors, so I'm not really gonna take the time to do that. But if you are interested in kind of grasping the vision of what Orbital's future looks like under Circus management, you should investigate what we are first, because we're not just here to promise you some get-rich-quick scheme with some over-promising and a complete lack of economic understanding. Because the thing is, you can really change the world with these technologies, and I just don't think that most people understand how to do it, and they end up just remixing the Ponzi scheme. And, the difference between people in DeFi and Bernie Madoff is that Bernie Madoff was able to hold the Ponzi scheme up for decades, and these people in DeFi can't even go a few months. And I think that's just speaks to the caliber of their management. But that's kind of disgusting. That's kind of disgusting by the fact that we have normalized this through just the fact that this is a very difficult idea to understand. Like, first of all, the technology is difficult, then the economics are difficult. And there are entire dimensions that haven't been explored yet. Like, blockchain is the ability to own a submarine in a world of like surface ships, and people don't understand that. It's really a flying submarine, like a submarine that can also fly. Like, there's just dimensions that you can access here. Micro values that can be captured and analyzed. Small things that people overlook that actually have value that can be translated into token value. And you know what? I'm not gonna get all preachy with you. That's my closing remark. If people want to hear me eschew my poetry about DeFi, they can come listen to me when I'm going on stream. But anyway,
Yeah, well, we can meet up later and pontificate upon such things as we've done in the past. So we'll save that for another time. Maybe we can do a live show just doing that, talking about some of the more philosophical aspects and possibilities of decentralized finance and blockchain technologies, decentralization, and things like that. So those are all very interesting and thoughtful answers. So I appreciate your time, Phithe. Thank you for meeting with me and letting me ask you these questions. And I will post this video at the same time as I post the other videos of the AMAs I do with the other projects. So that way it'll be as fair as possible. Everybody watching this and the other ones will have all of this information from you and the other projects all at the same time. And that way it can be all absorbed as each person wants at the exact same time. And then there will be a voting period. And the Obsidian Council and the Obsidian team, who is kind of hand-holding this handoff, they I think we're saying something like 72 hours after these videos release, so like 3 days, maybe longer if the people need it, to absorb this information, come up with their decision, and then there will be some kind of voting process. Those details will all be released in the coming days. So again, Phithe, thank you so much for your time. I will talk with you later, okay?
Thanks so much, Alex. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, thanks. You too. Bye.